Today's episode, I speak to Claudia Monacelli. As a pleasure seeker, Claudia explains what that really means for her and others. In this conversation, we discuss women of power and how they're perceived in media. Claudia uses the TV series Scandal as an example and explains why women of power are depicted with men at their side and not powerful on their own. We have an interesting discussion about power and the dynamics of it. Listen up to the rest of the conversation.
To survive and thrive in this complex, fast-moving world, we need effective maverick leaders who are change-eager, able to strategize, innovate, and execute, and are able to work for the greater good with integrity, empathy, and passion. This remains true regardless of whether you run your own business or work within someone else's. Judith Germain has been defining mavericks as willfully independent people since 2005 and recognizes that effective maverick leaders are known for their divergent thinking and ability to execute well. The Maverick Paradox at KLDR is a weekly conversational show that explores maverick leadership in all its guises, exploring what it is to be an effective maverick leader with experts in diverse fields. Come join us. The Maverick Paradox is for the pathologically curious.
Welcome to the Maverick Paradox podcast, where we explore what it is to be a maverick and discover effective modes of leadership. I am Judith Germain, and my mission is to propel the maverick mindset into a world where character and integrity will ultimately have a higher premium than personality and bureaucracy. So thank you for joining me on this journey. If you would like to continue with me, then please subscribe to my podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other popular podcast platforms. And today our guest is Claudia Monacelli. Hi, Claudia.
Hello, Jude.
Oh, I love your voice. It sounds so cool.
That's the first thing you have to tell your guest all the time, and they'll come down.
Claudia, tell us who you are.
Oh, well, you want the short version or the long version?
Well, you can do the short version and then I can ask questions.
Okay, we do ask ourselves every day that question. So I know who I am. I have a lot of hats, but I'm a university professor. I'm a psychic medium and an author, a voice coach. Those are the four main things. All right. So I write a lot, I research a lot, do those things. And probably if you could describe and you needed one description adjective, it would be really a pleasure seeker. I really do things because I have fun doing them, which is a luxury. I know that is, now you could just throw away the things you don't want to do and accept the things you want to do. But that's me today. So I feel fairly happy about that.
That's so cool. You know what? When you said pleasure seeker, it's got such a naughty connotation to it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, of course, that's the first thing people say. It's sexual, and they should. They should think that because people don't think about sex that often. Pleasure is anything that brings you joy, and it usually is in line with your senses. Things that bring you pleasure that you listen to. Something you're touching that makes you have pleasure, that you like to touch, a certain fabric, what you see, the pleasure of the eyes and smell, those pleasures always linked to your senses. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's that pleasure seeker as a hedonist, as a actual sexual animal. But that's sort of secondary. That's just one of the pleasures, really. That's a pleasure of touch. And of course, sexuality has all of the pleasures come into it at the same time. You don't want me to go down that road, do you?
No, I was just thinking about these people who sort of switched on this leadership podcast and find the first thing that's being said is about pleasure, which I don't think's ever happened before. But there you go. That's what happens when you put a maverick in charge. You get some divergent thinking.
Well,
go ahead. One of the things that I know that you do talk about is women in power.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about that, specifically how we see women in power in the media.
Well, this is an interesting question because when I started studying women of power was the word that I used, the preposition, because I'm not interested in women who have power, who are presidents and all of that, but people who have influence, people who have followers, people who are really powerful and have followers. And I think the underlying reason why I did that was because I was getting bored with my university job, and I had a lot of power because I brought in most of the students, and they didn't want to give me power. So I said, well, okay, let me go do and write something that I really like. And my academic publisher loved it. He accepted it. They said, oh, give us a chapter. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I want people to read this because the academic world is so, it's not broad. Very few people in the world read it. So I started writing for the American market, and what was called Women of Power is now called The Magic of Pleasure Seeking.
And wow, how did you get from there to there?
Well, this is interesting because initially my research dealt with the media, how women are portrayed in the media. That's journalism, TV series, movies, all of that, and how they influence women. So there's like a circular pattern there. People watch the media, they are influenced by the media, and they reproduce what they see. And in turn, the media fashions its ideas on real people. And one of the things that I do, I'm a social linguist, which means I studied language in context, in social contexts. So one of the many series that I studied was a TV series called Scandal in the United States. And it's no longer, I think it stopped about 3 years ago. Scandal was a TV series that focused on a woman called Olivia Pope. The actress was Kerry Washington, a Black actress, Black woman. And she was a fixer. She was a lawyer, and she had an organization. She organized a team of lawyers who acted as fixers for Washington, D.C. power brokers. She herself was a power broker. And it's really interesting because, of course, in her job, you can imagine how she speaks. I mean, you can imagine how she treats people who are her superiors, people who are under her, people who are her friends, and people who are her family. But it's you can imagine that, but we don't imagine that on the other side of the real Olivia Pope, that is her name, how she interacts with her family member, her father. Her father's called Eli Pope in the series, and he is an extremely powerful man. He is at the head of one of the intelligence agencies that no one knows, and on the outside, he works as a researcher for a museum. Now, there's a very brief passage. There's 5 lines between them, and he's always arguing with him. She's arguing with him. He's arguing with her, and he says to her, "Did I not raise you for better? How many times have I told you, you have to be what? You have to be what?" And she says, "Twice as." And he says, "Twice what?" "Twice as good. Twice as good as them to get half of what they have." And this is really powerful. And this is such a brief, it could be maybe 40 seconds that they said that, but it's sort of a pattern that goes through all of the series episodes. And the funny thing is, you can turn me off anytime you want, June, because I could go on and on. In the series, she has a relationship with the president, who is a white president, who's a married president, who's called Grant. President Grant, Fitzgerald Grant, they call him Fitz. And so it's how politics is a world of scandal, and that's the title actually, but scandals, power, anything, money, anything you could think of, it's all rolled into one. And this relationship with the president, I'm laughing about it because the tables turn on them. She starts working with him, is his fixer, and does all of the ugly things that no one else wants to do. They fall in love. He always talks about moving to northeast of the United States and living in Vermont in this cabin and in the mountains and all of that. And he's married to a woman, and the woman finds out. And what happens? The tables turn, and the woman, he has undergone so many scandals, they don't want him back. His wife decides to run for president. And she has a lover, and the lover wants to run for vice president with her. And it's so funny. I mean, I'm laughing now, but it's very dramatic, extremely dramatic. And she does indeed then become president. And Olivia Pope, this fixer, becomes her fixer as well. They make amends. They come to terms with something that is like, I know that you know that we both know, but I'm the woman for you, so they start working together. And so throughout, why I'm talking about this is because a lot of power language in these series comes about by repetition. And when we call what we call repetition, if I say, Jude, I love you. Jude, I love you. Jude, I love you 3 times. You get the message, right? That I love you. But there are other ways of simply saying the same thing exactly with the same words. And there's the use of synonyms. There's the use of changing one word out of the sentence. And all through the series and one episode, you can use the same concept. For example, if there's a couple and the wife has a lover, the husband finds out and he knows who it is, and he'll say, he's annoying. The audacity of him. Then later on, can you imagine? He's so bold, and there are all of these words that are they characterize this lover through the eyes of the father. That's a Freudian slip right there.
So can I just stop you there?
Sure.
Is this like women in leadership where, and I'm not talking about the ones that have managed to become senior leaders, but maybe the more junior ones, where what they're doing, so the woman is bossy and the man's assertive.
Yes,
and, is it that constant? Or
yes and no, right. Because of course the woman, any kind of media that portrays a strong woman, and I'm not saying 100%, but generally, you will find that they have a lover, a companion, a husband that is similar in nature in terms of power. Maybe they're architects, famous architects, they're engineers or something, but they are more homebound. So there is this portrayal of the woman, like the queen, and her husband. They have the major role, but the husband is there for them. Without him, she would be nothing. This is generally what the media does with powerful women. But of course, if you think of it, Jude, I have no idea who the German chancellor's companion is, or if she ever has one. But I do know who the English leaders' companions are and were. So it's interesting that how the German's chancellor was never scandalized, or never brought up her love life or her intimate life or her home life, personal life. But this is more because Europe is different from the United States in the way they treat women, the way they portray women as well. There are some similarities in a lot of the TV series in the UK compared to the United States. But and I'm not talking about the cultural difference, but I'm talking about the style of presentation in the media. Because what you see is, at least in the United States, you see women rising and the men scratching their heads and trying to band together to undercut them so they will maintain their power. This doesn't happen in the UK series. It's quite different. They generally accept the female leader in the media and try as they may, try as they might, they are never able to undercut the female leader. This is what, I may stand corrected. You could probably correct me, but this is what I generally have found. Yeah.
I wonder whether that has a lot to do with the law, because employment law in Europe is very clear on discrimination, especially over gender.
Yes, but it is also in the United States. It is also in the United States. But it's not any wonder that two people doing the same job, especially in the public administration, men make more money. Even in the private sector, for the same job, the women generally make lower amounts. They earn less. Because
I tell you what's quite interesting. I saw this comment.
Sure.
Where from the Chicago Tribune years ago, and it said, wife of a Bears lineman wins a bronze medal today in Rio Olympics. And it was like, no, hang on a second. You've got it wrong, because you're highlighting the fact that she's the wife of somebody.
Right.
And she's won a bronze medal in her own right.
And that you're saying that she won a bronze medal and he?
So the ladies, Corey Cogdell, Unrain, and this is the USA team, right. And she won a bronze medal in shooting in the Rio Olympics years ago. But how it was portrayed, like a woman immediately said, was her husband happens to be a lineback, and it was the wife of this lineback won a medal, as opposed to she won a medal in her own right. And I guess that's exactly what you're saying in terms of the woman having to be with a man. Is that
Yes, exactly. Not that they're happy or sad, but that's the way they're portrayed in the media. We're talking about the media, right? So it's talking about the media is so fascinating because it changes so quickly as well. You get rid of a TV series like Scandal, it's off the air, and then something else comes on, and maybe they portray women as being bipolar. And women tend to be bipolar all the time on TV series, whereas men are not.
So, are you saying that it's something that's happened, and because of you saying the power for repetition, it is all this same trope is repeated constantly until it becomes this is just the way it is?
Well, the power of repetition is just that. Obviously, if you listen to any kind of political speech, powerful politicians or who write their speeches know how to use different types of repetition. There are many different types of repetition to their favor. And one interesting use of repetition is a circular pattern. So, for example, you begin with an idea and then you end with an idea after an exchange. So, just very briefly going back to Olivia Pope when she was talking to her lover, President Grant, after he found out that the wife wanted to become president, and she has a lover who's also running for vice president. President Grant says, look, Olivia says to him, you have to make nice with Melly is the wife's name, and Andrew is her lover. And then the whole exchange goes on. He says, no, he's off the ticket, and goes on, an amateur move. And there's all different types of repetition in the end. And this goes on for about 20 minutes. The last thing she says when she's ready to leave is, you have to remember to make nice with Andrew and Melly. And then she leaves the scene. And those are things you remember. It is a circular pattern. And in that 20 minutes, he tried to use a repetition in a certain way. She just came right out of it and ends up with this beautiful circular pattern. and you know that he's hurting, she is not. It's interesting. It's just really interesting to see how that happens. And sometimes, let me give you another example that's probably a little easier and more on point. We are podcasters, both of us, and a week ago, I met another podcaster because my platform was giving me a little bit of an issue. So he had the same issues. And so we met online, and he said, write to me. And he was just starting out. So he said, look, I made an intro and I'd like you to give me your, unbiased opinion. And so it was, I guess, maybe 3 minutes. And the name of his podcast was something like on a good day, the way we agree, or yes, I like your, anyway, the idea was that they would come together, the people who are on his podcast as guests, find a way of negotiating so that they can be on the same page. And he kept using on the same page during the intro. And I, said to him, you repeated it 5 times in 3 minutes. I thought the title was On the Same Page. Maybe it should be, because I don't even remember the name of your title. Now you can see, I attest to that. I can't remember the name of his podcast. And so the repetition really, really strengthens things in English, although there's a limit to what you can do. English doesn't, it can be challenging. If I say to you, we've never met, Jude, right? And we come on, we get to know each other, and you ask me a couple of things. Well, I don't want to talk about politics, right? Okay. Well, I really love politics. And then you say, well, I've had difficult problems. Well, I really do think it would be nice, and so then I keep stressing how a political angle would fit in. And then you get irked, because in English, you can't do that. You can't be that pushy, because it will give you less power. The more you are direct in your language, and it seems like an illusion, or almost like a fallacy, the more you threaten someone. Because if you said to me, look, I don't want to talk about politics. And I said, well, politics would be a good topic for your, and I went on and on. That's being more direct. And it gives me less power, because obviously you become perturbed. And it would have been better for me to use passive language. It would be, some people say, and it's not me. So there are many ways, to get around that. But language is just so fascinating, what you can do with it.
It's interesting you say that. Thank you for that, because it occurs to me that you can only have power if the other person next to you have it.
Yes, you can't be a leader if no one follows you, obviously.
No, and you can't be, as I say, a woman or a man of power.
Yeah.
If the other person won't. No, and I think that's what irks people about Mavericks, I think, because Mavericks are a bit, they're happy for you to feel like you're in power.
Yeah.
But what they really know is that you have no power over them.
Yeah, that's great. Exactly.
But if you want to feel like you have power and you're not, it's not causing them any issues, then that's fine.
Yeah.
Be powerful.
Yeah.
But it's a bit like, it's a bit like, when you meet someone and they give you the power handshake.
Yes.
And then squish your fingers off or something. I always have to kind of not kind of hide my smile, because I feel like you've now told me something about you that you didn't intend to. Yeah. And I'm aware of that. So in that respect, I have more power than you, because I now know something about you that you didn't
exactly.
want to show.
Yeah.
And you didn't get, and I'm not intimidated by the fact that you felt it necessary to squish my hand.
Yeah.
And it's quite funny, because it's seen as I'm being really dominant, I'm grabbing hold of your hand and I'm showing the power, and I'm like, no, you're just showing me you're insecure and you're concerned about something.
Yeah. As you were talking and you started talking about the maverick, I was thinking about the origin of that word, and because it's such a powerful word, maverick. And it's an archetype, really. When you say I'm a queen, you know what that means. If you say I'm a witch, you know what that means. If you say I'm a king or a pauper, and if you say he or she's a maverick, you know what that is. It's a universal concept. That's what makes it so powerful. I wonder where it comes from, where it originates.
Well, I can tell you where it comes from, and I can tell you how I define it. So, the word maverick comes from Samuel Maverick, who was a sort of horse trader.
Right. That's what I know. Mm-hmm.
And what he used to do with his cattle, he used to brand them. Mm-hmm. So that if you found an unbranded one, they belonged to Maverick.
Yeah.
But if you lost your unbranded one, they also belonged to Maverick too.
Yeah.
So it's a bit so there's a bit of a vagary as to, did that mean that he got other people's cattle because they were unbranded?
Yeah.
But I define Maverick as being willfully independent.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So it's a different definition. Okay, I think it's probably a good place to stop, unless you've got something that you'd want to share with the audience, maybe on the power of language. Or...
No, that's fine. That's fine. I think people will have had enough of me. Thank you so much for having me, Jude.
No, thank you for coming on the show and having an interesting conversation in an area we didn't think we'd get to. So.
Right, exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you once again for tuning into the Maverick Paradox podcast. I hope you have enjoyed listening to my conversation with Claudia as much as I enjoyed having it. At the Maverick Paradox, we improve your impact and influence by enabling you to effectively strategize, innovate, and execute. To find out more, contact us at judith@maverickparadox.com.
The Maverick Paradox. Judith Germain is an author, speaker, consultant, mentor, and trainer, and the leading authority on Maverick leadership. She is the founder of the Maverick Paradox, which supports organizations to enhance their leadership capabilities and to help business owners develop and grow their businesses. Judith enables individuals, business owners, and organizations to improve their impact and influence. She is also HR Zone's leadership columnist, an international online radio host, and her expert opinion has appeared in national, international, and trade press.